Hello and welcome to another edition of Pick 3 DST, where I give you 3 defenses I like, 1 defense I'm fading, and 1 defense I'm stashing ahead of Week 6 of the NFL season. As a reminder, these are not my full weekly DST rankings. If you want to check those out, you can click the link below, which will take you to the article that I update as the week goes on when we get weather concerns and injury updates and things of that nature. We're going to start, as always, with our accountability check in what was a good bounce-back week for us there in week number 5. Our stud defense, the Vikings, did not come through in a European showdown against the Browns and scored just 3 points. However, our solid defense, the Arizona Cardinals, finished with 7 points, which was good for 8th on the week, and I had them ranked exactly as the 8th ranked defense. Our sleeper defense, the Houston Texans, scored 11 points and finished as the 5th ranked defense on the week. And then the defense we faded, the Buffalo Bills, finished 16th on the week. So we feel good about those last 3 picks, and we'll try to keep the momentum going this week. My sleeper defense for the week is the Tennessee Titans. Consensus has them down at 17th, but they are my 9th ranked defense on the week. This is purely a matchup play. The Raiders give up 10.8 fantasy points per game to opposing defenses. That is the 3rd worst mark in the NFL. The Raiders also looked really bad on Sunday without Brock Bowers and starting left tackle Colton Miller. I don't expect either of those guys to play this week, so that's why I have the Titans ranked here. Brock Bowers has been called week to week, so if he does come back, I might move the Titans down a couple of spots, but it wouldn't drastically change my ranking here because this Raiders offense gives up the 2nd most turnovers in the NFL, and they've given up the fifth most sacks in the NFL, including 4 on Sunday without Miller, so I think that's a way for the Titans to attack them. Titans also have the 2nd highest ranked return team according to PFF, so that gives them a little special teams boost. Maybe they can make a big play, return a kick for a touchdown, get some extra points as well, but that's another avenue for them to sneak into the top 10, and so I like the Titans as a dart throw top 10 option this week. My solid defense for the week is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Consensus has them at 8th, but they are my 3rd ranked defense on the week. The Steelers are coming off a bye, and they rank 7th for me in my season-long rankings. On the season, they are 2nd in the NFL in turnover rate, and they are averaging 9 fantasy points per game, so that's a really solid mark. We know that this team is going to be coached up and ready to go for a home game against the Browns coming out of a bye. This Browns offense has given up the 10th most fantasy points to opposing defenses. And yes, they're a little bit stingier with Quinshon Judkins now back as their running back. However, they still gave up 19 points to the Detroit Lions 2 weeks ago. And you're now getting rookie quarterback Dylan Gabriel, who's not playing in Europe against just random fans, but is going into Pittsburgh to play against the Steelers off a bye week. And so I think this matchup sets up really well for the Steelers, and I like them as a top 5 play this week. Before I get to my stud defense of the week, pause this video and comment below. Let me know which defense you're starting this week or ask me any start-sit questions, and I'll get to those as the week goes on. My stud defense of the week is the Green Bay Packers. Consensus has them at 3rd, and I have them at 4th on the week. The Packers are rostered in just 38% of Yahoo leagues right now after that surprising showing against the Cowboys where they let up 40 points and then they went on bye. So this is actually an opportunity to scoop up a defense that we still very much believe in. I also expect that the Packers coaches certainly laid into them during their bye week after that showing. So we're going to get a pretty fired up Packers defense going up against a Jake Browning-led Bengals offense that gives up the most fantasy points to opposing defenses at 12.4 fantasy points per game. Yes, the Bengals were able to put up some points against the Lions. However, that was after the Lions had built up a nearly 30-point lead and had lost one of their starting cornerbacks and some other defensive players, and so the Bengals were able to put up points in what was essentially garbage time. So that doesn't really turn me off of playing defenses against this Bengals offense. The Bengals rank dead last in the NFL in turnover rate. They've allowed 15 sacks in 5 games, and that's a problem against the Packers defense that ranks 5th in the NFL in pressure rate, so I like the Packers as a play this week. The defense I'm fading this week is the Seattle Seahawks. Consensus has them up at 5th, but I have them down at 13th on the week. I'm really not sure why we keep continuing to attack this Jacksonville Jaguars offense with fantasy defenses. It has not worked out this year. The Jaguars are allowing just 3.6 fantasy points per game to opposing defenses. They're not a particularly good matchup. Their offense ranks 15th in the NFL in scoring rate, 15th in the NFL in turnover rate, and 4th in sack rate allowed. So they don't give up sacks, and they're middle of the pack in terms of turnovers and points scored. So they are an above average offense, which means they're a below average matchup for fantasy defenses, and the points bear that out. We also have a Seahawks defense that went into last week without DeMarcus Lawrence, Julian Love, Devon Witherspoon, and then in the middle of the game last week lost Reek Woolen and starting linebacker Derek Hall. So this Seattle Seahawks defense is really banged up. I'm keeping an eye on the practice report, but I'm ranking the Seahawks 13th, and that's assuming that they're going to be moderately healthy. If all of those guys are out again, I'm going to move the Seahawks down a couple more spots, and so this is not a defense that I'm really looking to play this week. Lastly, my stash to get ahead of waivers for next week is the New England Patriots, who are going to be facing the Tennessee Titans. The Patriots are rostered in just 17% of leagues, and they actually get a pretty good matchup this week against the New Orleans Saints as well. They are in my top 10, so that roster rate may tick up. And if you actually want to pick up the Patriots and use them this week, I think you can certainly do that. However, if you have a really solid defense this week, you can still pick up the Patriots and stash them for next week when they go up against the Titans team that gives up the second most fantasy points to opposing defenses. The Patriots right now are 8th in the NFL in opponent scoring rate and 9th in turnover rate, and they just forced 3 turnovers on Sunday Night Football against the Buffalo Bills, and the Bills last season tied an NFL record with the fewest turnovers in a full season. So this Patriots defense is certainly firing on all cylinders under Mike Vrabel right now, and I love their schedule in the weeks ahead, and so I think now could be the time to pick up the New England Patriots. That's going to do it for this week. As a reminder, click the link below to get my full weekly DST rankings, which I'll update as the week goes on. Don't forget to like and subscribe to get all of our fantasy football content and regular football content over at NBC Sports. And I'll check you next week on another episode of Pick 3 DST. Good luck on Sunday.